Hello. So today we have Venus conjunct Pluto in the sign of Capricorn, and approximately a week from now, Venus will station retrograde and then do another pass on Capricorn or on Pluto and Capricorn in a retrograde motion, then eventually station direct and come back and do it again. So we have a whole bunch of Venus Pluto happening during this Venus retrograde, and I'm here to make a video about it. Um, Now, the thing is I've kind of encountered some resistance to making a video on this particular conjunction because, well, to be honest, I actually have a Venus Pluto conjunction in my own chart, although it's in a different sign. Um, and on one hand, I was thinking, like as somebody it's kind of funny because I'm not born during a Venus retrograde, but there was one shortly before the time that I was born. So it still is kind of a retrogrady Venus, kind of just recently kind of moving forward. Um, so it still kind of has maybe a bit of that retrograde flavor to it, but I've got that like as more than anybody else, I should be well aware, well informed about what these particular dynamics are all about. So I should be well equipped to make a video on the topic, right? But Pluto has to do generally with things that are kept secret, hidden, private, or maybe in even a kind of a Jungian Freudian kind of sense. It could be like the shadow or the id, which is repressed, maybe. Um, Pluto, of course, having to do with Hades, the underworld. Um, Not quite exactly hell, but you know what I mean. It's like it's the underworld is kind of like that, right? It's kind of what you'd rather keep covered up and not go on some adventure, a Hillmanian journey to the underworld. I'm thinking about the or whatever dream in the underworld. Um, the point is that Pluto can stand for a lot of things that are either grotesque or strange or for whatever taboo, whatever reason you don't want to like get into it, and it's kind of uncomfortable, and but that's sort of like hitting on the archetype of Pluto. So in a way, it's kind of like we're on the right track, even of having those kinds of things coming up. Um, but I think it also gets into this other kind of issue about how much we decide to keep private versus how much we're public with. And that's something that I've been navigating with trying to decide about, what I'm going to be putting in these videos and stuff like that. And, on one hand, it's like I can't, if I want to be completely private about everything that goes on with me and just keep it strictly to the astrology, then there's like, like I feel like I would be too uptight. Like I'd be like, oh, I can't have this go anywhere near talking about what's really going on in my own personal life, and that seems like too much of a constraint for me. I'd like to be, it's like, um, it's too, you can't color outside the lines, or else something really bad would happen. You have to keep it very rigid in this kind of yeah, controlled, rigid kind of thing. Um, Whereas if I was just to be all open and out front with it, um, I mean that could be another side of Pluto as well. I was thinking, um, because I mean another potential uh, delineation of what Pluto stands for is exploitation, basically, and there's certain things like I'll to give an example, like an easy one that I can think of is things to do with like mental health stuff. And I don't like again, I don't know how many people watching my videos are familiar with um, what it is I do or what it is I've been doing with my time over the years, but I was involved in what I would say alternative mental health groups, peer support groups, and stuff like that. Um, and I mean, I could present the way of like if I wanted, like I've recorded videos about mental health topics before and put them up under different channels and things like that. Um, but when like I think this is a good example because what I notice when it comes to mental health videos is that there's a certain style of video that you could do which could be very like sensationalistic, and it's like like it could be you could title it something like you know like uh I don't know um like florid schizophrenic tells all or something, right? Or like this is what life with schizophrenia looks like, or that you make it very like you're really kind of like sensationalizing it in a way that almost feels a bit exploitative, or how would you say that? Um, Whereas you could approach the same subject matter in a way that isn't trying to like you're not trying. I mean, this is like okay, there's something about Pluto which is sort of like taboo and secretive, and Venus is like the attractor, right? Venus is all about what's attracting people in. So that could be one potential of combining Venus and Pluto together, is that Venus, which stands for attraction, and Pluto, which is taboo and repressed. It could be like, come, all the secrets are exposed, come here, tell all. And and you're turning this sort of like exploitation into what is usually kept private and secret and maybe like tactfully not talked about. You're just like, I'm just gonna put it all out there, and in a kind of way that's almost like trashy, you know what I mean? And then like you're doing that to try to like generate like interest and stuff, and it's like kind of like the Jerry Springer show, but it's like I mean, I feel like with social media, it's like we're almost in a kind of like self exploitation mode where you're like, oh, if I make a video in this way, can I, by digging out the dirt, is that going to get me more followers or something like that? I mean, these are just, this is stuff that comes to mind, anyways, when I think of Venus and Pluto together. Um, I was also thinking that there's a it was kind of funny. My last video, I made this comment like about how, for the sake of being transparent, I was going to be transparent about how like I was making this solar eclipse video, and honestly, I didn't have like I started off without a clue really on what I thought about the eclipse or what I wanted to say about the eclipse, and I went. And I'm going to be transparent that I don't want to pretend to be a know-it-all when really I'm like I don't know what I'm doing here. I honestly don't know if that was really my best video or not. It was kind of it was what it was. I won't get into that too much. But after making that comment, there's a author that I've been into named Byung-Chul Han, and I've read a couple of his books so far, and I was shopping online to get another one of his books, and I noticed that he had a book called The Transparency Society. To give a bit of context, I've read a book of his called The Palliative Society, and he's got another one called The Burnout Society, and so each of these books is about a different sort of like tendency in the culture. The palliative society is one of avoiding pain, avoiding that which is uncomfortable. Um, the burnout society I haven't read yet, but it's all about the kind of burnout culture of people pushing themselves too hard in their work, or the demands of work burning people out, and so that we have it as like a widespread problem, this sort of burnout culture. And I ordered that one along with the Transparency Society because there's something about that resonated with me, of Byung Chul Han criticizes the it is being a false ideal that we're aiming towards total transparency, where there's this almost like this pressure to be like open and out there with all your secrets and stuff like that, in this sort of like tell all way, or that we're using our own personal lives as something to put out in, I don't know, blogs or like this or whatever, right? But I haven't read the book yet, so I can't really. That's my impression. It could be about something completely different once I actually start reading it, right? But um, these are just things that are on my mind leading into doing this video. Um, but I think, yeah, the basic thing though is that, like, I mean, I'm not. I often kind of think to myself that it's like I'm not. I don't really feel like I'm done anything terribly wrong, or that I'm like terribly ashamed of the things in my life, and so like I don't have any problem with being open about things. But then on the other hand, it just like feels inappropriate to put too much of my own personal life in a public video like this. Like, maybe if somebody wanted to like have a conversation with me personally one on one and get into this stuff, I wouldn't have any problem talking about all this stuff. But like to just like put things out there on a public YouTube video, yeah, I mean, like maybe it's not even appropriate. And I think that's that whole question of like the line of what is kept private versus what is put out there, and how that relates to trying to like get more followers or get more attention, or this. I mean, that's all very Venus Pluto stuff in itself, and that's just me. I have my own aversions or my own obstacles to making a video on this topic. So but I don't know. Maybe this is too much of a preliminary ramble. So I'll just get right into it. Um, there's certain things I associate with Venus Pluto. As I've said, I kind of already kind of mentioned that secrets and stuff like that are things which may be taboo. Of course, when you're talking with Venus, this will specifically relate to things that are in friendships or relationships. Um, there's also usually a theme about jealousy or control associated with it, about like controlling your partner, or not trusting your partner, or being jealous of your partner, having interest in other people and stuff like that. These are all kind of Venus Pluto dynamics, or maybe your partner is spending time with somebody else and you want them to spend time with you. These are some Venus Pluto stuff. It could be because there's a still secretive thing. It could be like secret crushes or something, where it's like you have strong feelings for someone but it's not appropriate to express them. Or I mean, it could also be like unrequited love kind of thing, where it's like you feel very strongly but the person isn't into you and you're all miserable about it or something. Or you get a situation like that where where it's not working out in terms of relationship, but you get all obsessed about it, and you can't let it go. These are all Venus Pluto kind of things. There could also be there could maybe be something to do with like infidelity and cheating, maybe, because that's also like the Pluto kind of thing, which you might try to hide and cover up. Um, there's also I again, this is another thing where it's like I won't get into the details because it's like somebody else's story, and I probably shouldn't be going into it. But I talked to somebody else who also had a Venus Pluto conjunction, and they were telling me about, I won't even get into it, but let's just say this much, that it sounds like unhealthy relationships, or that you have the obsession, your romantic obsession is on somebody who is not even probably very good for you. And yeah, I mean, I don't have to get into details, that maybe this is something that if I just by keeping it more vague and ambiguous, that a lot of people with Venus Pluto might find relatable. Um, Another thing that I associate with Venus Pluto is it doesn't necessarily even have to do with like romantic relationships or but it could be like there's a social element with Venus of like let's say like meeting people and making friends, and then the Pluto comes in like you meet somebody new and they like divulge some really like dark heavy stuff. um and and like this could, I mean, again, I'll give it like the example that often comes to my mind, like with this, is that there's one time where I met somebody and started like I don't know, like I might have thought they were kind of attractive or something like that, and I was trying to well, whatever, talk to this person or make some kind of connection or something. And then I don't know if I found this out like immediately about them, but like it wasn't too long before they told me, this person told me that like both of their parents had committed suicide because they had like some kind of like terrible illness, and like the person was obviously really traumatized by this stuff, and it's just kind of like, yeah, I mean that's kind of like an example, right? Like there could be some really like dark, heavy stuff, and like as a if you're a person with Venus Pluto in your chart, for some reason, either you might be drawn to or you might attract these kinds of people into your life, and you're kind of like in that there's kind of a kind of weight and heaviness that comes with that, or you're like, why I mean, even if you in your own life don't have things that are necessarily all that dark and heavy, you're kind of like, why am I attracting all this dark stuff to me? Even if it's like this is like secondhand kind of thing of like that, you're not going through this big traumatic thing, but you seem to attract a lot of people who have, and that's kind of like Venus is the attractor, and then Pluto's the sort of heavy, dark, kind of traumatic thing. Um, it could, I mean, I suppose that Venus Pluto could also relate to some, traumatic, heavy stuff actually in relationships directly themselves, but I don't know. Like this is my experience anyways. I kind of I might associate some of that stuff more to do with like Venus Mars or Mars Pluto. Um would be more of like the red flag than just Venus Pluto on its own. Um, but yeah, that's a kind of like a rundown, anyways, of my associations with Venus Pluto. Also, I mean, yeah, I don't like getting into this stuff because it's like I don't want to associate myself with it. But like, I think it's also very common to associate Venus Pluto with the kind of stalker kind of dynamic, because it's like, um, Pluto can have that kind of obsessive quality and that kind of creepy quality that goes with stalker dynamics. So anyways, I'm just trying to lay it out for you, tell it how it is, without getting into like whatever, dragging out all my personal stuff. But I mean, yeah, whatever. There's a couple other things. So I mean, that's I basically break down this transit into different parts. We've got Venus conjunct Pluto, you've got Venus conjunct Pluto in Capricorn, and then you've got the Venus retrograde coming up. So which one should we do next? Should we do Venus retrograde or Venus Capricorn? Well, how about, for some reason I'm thinking Venus Capricorn. Now there's I went through, there's a good website called astrocharts.com. It's like astro dash charts, and it's good in the sense that it has a celebrity lookup where you can set things like Venus conjunct Pluto, Venus and Capricorn, and then generate a list of famous people who have these placements. So I did that with Venus and Capricorn, and there are a lot of. I mean, I don't know. I mean, almost got bogged down in it, like too much information, because there's a lot of famous people who have Venus. I mean, well, you're going to get a lot of results on this website regardless, but there's certain things. One thing that I noticed is that there's a lot of people who are like kind of like classic, you know, famous movie stars. I mean, this might be even like it's a bit almost beyond my generation because I'm only like people like Humphrey Bogart who are huge movie stars I'm not super familiar with because I'm not of that generation that would be watching a lot of Humphrey Bogart movies, but I recognize the names like Humphrey Bogart, James Dean. Um, what are some other ones here? Um, well, we got more modern ones like Justin Timberlake too, but uh, Elvis Presley. Um, oh yeah, you got Brad Pitt, Paul Newman, Burt Reynolds, Steve Jobs, Jim Carrey, Rock Hudson, Neil Diamond. I made a huge list here. It's almost a little bit unmanageable but so like it's a Walt Disney's another big one. I don't know. Like um to be honest though, I'm not I guess when I was listening, there's a certain sort of like classic kind of rugged masculine movie star thing that seems to go with men who have Venus and Capricorn, and that could be to do with the kind of like the. I think like when I think of Capricorn, I think of it as being a kind of a rugged sign due to that kind of that Saturn ruled Earth quality. Saturn, there's a certain there may be a certain toughness that goes with having that Saturn quality. Because Saturn is you have to have the strength to overcome obstacles and all this kind of stuff with Saturn and I think of Capricorn as a kind of like this sort of like it's winter, right? So it's kind of like a barren landscape that it requires maybe some toughness to get through rather than the lush cancer on the other side of everything's growing in the peak of summer and all this kind of thing. Now, there's when I think of Venus and Capricorn, I don't know if this is really going to say anything about what a Venus and Capricorn person is like, but this is when I apply Venus to this sign, these are what comes up for me anyways is a kind of the practical considerations around relationships, which is not even really necessarily the sexiest, most attractive thing, but there's certain things like I'm thinking like there's certain things that might seem really boring and not really directly relevant to friendships and relationships and that kind of stuff, but are nonetheless very important. Um, for example, like does your like let's say you meet somebody you're interested in but like you are really busy with work and you don't have any time in your schedule to go on a date and you're like my only day off is like this day and then I'm busy for 3 weeks and then they're like the other person's like I'm busy that day, it doesn't even work and I can't and neither of you can arrange your schedule so that it works and it's just dead in the water basically because of like something that doesn't have anything to do with whether you're compatible or you're attracted to each other or we'd be a good match. It's like you're literally your time frame, this how your life is structured is not conducive to it. Similarly, this is really funny that like my mom for some reason bought me a psychology textbook, and I'm not really. I don't know. I haven't gone to college for stuff like psychology, And I don't know if I mean, it's something I'm interested in, but there's something about actually like the actual taking like a Psych 101 that I just have this feeling that I really wouldn't like. But she got me the textbook anyways, I guess to get a sense of what it might be like if I took a course like this. And I was thinking about, I don't know. I was thinking about getting rid of the textbook, and I opened it up and I flipped to a random page, and it was like they were talking about how when it comes to attraction, um, that a big indicator of who people find attractive are people that live closer to them. Which was like, I don't, maybe I should actually pull out the textbook and actually, I don't know if like I'm explaining this in a way that sounds very I don't know, but the basic idea is that like I don't like, if I guess especially on the age of the internet, like before the internet age, I don't really know if how this would really be a big factor, but like there might be somebody who might be really attractive, or you might be really compatible with, or you might be a good match, but you live on opposite sides of the world, and it's just not very practical. You know what I mean? And it's like, if you were gonna make it, not to say that this stuff doesn't work, but if you were gonna make it work, you'd have to be like, it's a pretty serious thing, and one of you is gonna have to like completely rearrange your whole life to somehow accommodate the impracticality of living very far apart. And there's just a whole bunch of practical issue, like what you're gonna, I don't know, about long distance relationships, like you're just gonna do a lot of like, Skype, Zoom sessions or something like that, and build a relationship and not have that in-person connection. I don't know. So, but like, if there's somebody who's, let's say, not as you're not as attracted to, or you're not as compatible with, or it doesn't seem like as good of a match, but that person lives like on your street, or like, or in your neighborhood, in such a way that if you guys wanted to like spend time together, it would be very convenient. The fact that the person's actually available and accessible will greatly overrule any quality that somebody has, but they're not in the same neighborhood as you, right? Um, so basically, what I'm getting here is that the way I just look at Capricorn is that I see Capricorn as a sign that has to do with the practical considerations of, you know, how you accommodate the friendship, the relationship, whatever is going on in your life. Or also, it could also be the circumstances which lead to that coming about anyways. Because I think when it comes to like meeting people, so much of it has to do with like being in the right place at the right time. And it may have, like, there's so, because it's kind of crazy if you think about it. There's so many people in the world. There could be so many possible friends and love interests and all this kind of stuff, but there's a sense of randomness, or a sense that like how do you meet people anyways, right? Like, it's like now that you have stuff like whatever, Tinder and online dating, it's like this kind of mechanized way that attempts to solve that problem. And but in some, like, I think there's something to be said for there's a sort of organic quality when you just meet by chance because you're in the right place at the right time, or that you decided to go to the same party, or that you had this one acquaintance. That there's, I think, when I think about Capricorn, I think less of like this less of like Tinder or something like that, where you're just having a machine take care of that problem, and more about the actual, like, the how this thing comes together based on the circumstances of our life, and the circumstances themselves may not even necessarily have anything to do with it, right? Um, I think I think because Capricorn is an Earth sign, it may also have to do with materialistic concerns. I don't. This is when I was thinking about this, I was considering that a lot of what we think about Capricorn as being a kind of a career-driven, hard-working kind of sign, a lot of that has to do with his association with the 10th house, which is 12-letter alphabet, and that's not how I like to do astrology. Um, so I try to avoid anything 10th housey in trying to come up with what I think about Capricorn. But Earth as an element has to do with material resources, anyways. Um, and as such, I think there's, and especially when you put in, when you start to layer in the different elements, like when you bring back in Pluto, Pluto has a lot to do with power, domination, and stuff like that. So there could be like, um, I think when with this particular Venus transit with conjunct Pluto in Capricorn with the retrograde, there could be something going on that is a risk of like either gold diggers, just to put it bluntly, like it's like being attracted, but you're attracted more to the the wealth, the status, the power, the strength, the being in there with the right people. It's all this sort of all again. It's another thing to do with the circumstances around the relationship rather than the relationship itself. There could be certain circumstances which are very attractive. Maybe the person has a really nice house or something, right? Like who knows? There's all this material stuff that doesn't actually have anything to do with the relationship itself, which could be kind of overweigh the actual relationship. I think that goes with Capricorn. Um, I'm starting also to kind of review my own techniques about before I was in this phase of really associating um, tarot cards with astrology. And I think it might be because the Rider Waite Smith deck is only something that was created, what was it, the late 19th century, I guess, was around the time the Rider Waite Smith, or was the early 20s. It's not a very old thing though, the Rider Waite Smith deck. And it's what can I say? It's not it's if you're going to go on traditional astrology and be pure to the tradition, there's not really, you don't really have any business associating tarot cards with astrology and claiming it to be a traditional technique. Um, but I don't know. Like I'm not like I'm not a hard edged traditional astrologer. I kind of bend the rules a bit, and the Devil card is associated with the sign of Capricorn, and I think that the Devil card could be particularly appropriate in understanding this retrograde because it the Devil card often comes up when there's a focus on the material aspect of things. um and that could be, like they have the two lovers are chained to the devil. They're under the devil's control in the tarot card, and it's like that could be that you are chained to the material circumstances. Like it's like you're like you're chained to your desire for, it could be greed to have more money or to have more wealth or more power or something like that. um or there's also stuff, it could also be like a sex thing. I mean, it's like there's certain, like the pleasure of sex, and that you're like, if that is has more weight than the anything else in the relationship, then in a way that is a kind of materialism in itself, because it's like you are, it's kind of like you're using the person for gratification, um, or using the person for pleasure, but the person is kind of like disposable, or like what you're really attached to is the pleasure, and like you'll do anything to get it or something like that, and in that sense you're bound, that you're kind of like a slave or something, right? And I mean, you can all get all sorts of like Capricorn goatee kind of associations and Pluto associations out of that. Um, so that kind of sums up Venus conjunct Pluto, and Venus in Capricorn. There's also the whole topic about Venus retrograde. But you know what? I'm already gone on for like 35 minutes here, so maybe I can do that. It's also Venus doesn't even go retrograde for another week too. So like maybe I can just make this video about Venus in and conjunct Pluto in Capricorn and leave the retrograde for later. Um, yeah, for the sake of keeping things concise and not dragging on too long, maybe we'll do that. Okay, sounds good. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and got something from it. Uh, if you like what I do, subscribe to my channel, hit the like button, tell all your friends. And I do natal astrology readings as well as if you want, hell, if you want a horary reading, I'm not even that well practiced, but I have I will do a horror reading for you. Just I'm not claiming to be an expert. I will also do solar return readings. I will look at synastry charts. Um, I will not do a what is it, composite chart though, because I think composite charts are silly. Um, and another thing is I've got a friend who's not even on social media anymore, but she was talking about whatever, getting a weekly astrology group going, where we would just like, I don't know, hang out and just talk about anything astrology related. So if that is something you'd be interested in, to just like hang out online and talk about astrology, hit me up. Um, and I don't know, or leave a comment or something, and we can arrange that. This is like my advertisement at the end of the video. Okay, thanks.